Hi, I'll be picking up where I left off in the last video in the chapter on the brace from Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach's Versuch über die wahre Art, das Klavier zu spielen. Diese schöne Manier ist gleichsam zu gutwillig. Sie schickt sich fast allerwegens hin und wird aus dieser Ursache oft gar sehr gemissbraucht, indem viele glauben, die ganze Zierde und Annehmlichkeit des Klavierspielens bestehe darin, dass sie alle Augenblicke einen Doppelschlag anbringen. Es wird also nötig sein, dessen geschickte Anbringung näher zu untersuchen, weil, ungeachtet dieser Gutwilligkeit, ein Haufen verführerischer Gelegenheiten vorkommen können, wo diese Manier nicht gut tut. Here Bach is referring to Lilliput. And from what he says, one can gather that Lilliput's understanding of piano playing and music was as superficial then as it is now. And just like how a fashion victim from the 80s will not be dressed in the same outfit as a fashion victim from the 90s, the two Lilliputs, while being the same, are going to be dressed differently. Nowadays, all the sophistication, grace and pleasantness of piano playing isn't going to lie in them introducing a brace at every given moment, but in the current ideas of expression. So in volume control, adding crescendos and diminuendos, or retardandos and accelerandos, or throwing around a trending term like agogic at their pleasure, without consequence and completely convinced of themselves. Both, though, are victims of the same deficiency, of a superficial understanding of the nature of expression as it exists as a part of music. Ornaments to Lilliput nowadays are rather an onus than a means of expression. What are the requirements, playing ornaments, that they'll have? One can connect this to what Bach said at the end of paragraph 7 from the chapter on ornaments in general. Und hoffe, durch alles dieses, das hier und da eingewurzelte falsche Vorurteil von der Notwendigkeit der überhäuften bunten Noten bei dem Klavierspielen ziemlich aus dem Wege zu räumen. So that'll apply in different ways to both Lilliputs. The Lilliput then, the überhäuften bunten Noten, will mean the introducing the brace at every given moment, because they think that's what makes, all the grace and sophistication and pleasantness of piano playing will be contained within by doing that. So they'll be themselves and they'll be telling their students to add braces wherever and whenever possible. Whereas now, it's all volume control. The grace and pleasantness in music is about volume control, so it's not adding the brace. But ornaments now are rather an onus, and what's the requirement of those ornaments with Lilliput nowadays is that you squeeze in as many notes as possible into each ornament. There is a lot of subtext that can be read into this paragraph. And how will they react to Bach telling them he can help them sound less bad than they do? Because that's what he's essentially saying. He's saying, I can help you sound less bad than you're sounding now. How will they respond to that? Will they welcome that with open arms? I mean, it'll be different because Bach is famous. And since the abuse of the brace by Lilliput in 1753, according to Bach, was extensive, could it really be that it took Mozart that long in his career to even discover it? So that's in reference to my mention of the food for thought about looking through the Mozart sonatas. And if you were to say, well, to conclude, since the sign of the brace doesn't pop up till much later on in his career, if you were to think, well, that's because Mozart didn't know about it at the beginning and he only learnt about it later. And if Lilliput were abusing it, could it be that, is that possible that Mozart didn't know of its existence? Even after Mozart's lessons with Johann Christian Bach. Da diese Manier in den meisten Fällen gebraucht wird, die Noten glänzend zu machen, so werden gemeiniglich die, so wegen des Effekts, unterhalten und simpel vorgetragen werden müssen, und wobei denen, so den wahren Vortrag und Druck nicht verstehen, die Zeit insgemein zu lang wird, dadurch verdorben. So that was the first sentence of that paragraph. And what I decided to do here was I decided to use the translation that I found on the internet, on wiki sources. And this was a translation where it said it was proofread twice. And since I've seen this translation, it's been changed since. Like, I've got the suspicion that they changed their translation of the geschwänzten Noten, that they add the tails now since. And that chapter used to be called On the Double Whammy, and now they've changed that thing. So it's been proofread more than one and more than twice is what I would conclude from what I've seen. And since Lilliput love to applaud the cult of themselves, they love, if I see a video on rotation, that'll have thousands and thousands of views, even though I can't imagine there's anybody, like most of those people clicking onto it, haven't heard of rotation before, because it's, the dogs on the street know about rotation. It's one of those things that are constantly, regurgitated all the time, as if it's new information. So I conclude that Lilliput Lilliput loves Lilliput. If Lilliput could choose between a Lilliput person and Bach, they'll run to the Lilliput person for some bizarre reason that I don't understand. And so, since that's the case, since it seems to be that's the case, I thought maybe if I present the Lilliput translation, it would get a much better response. It would get all the likes, all the views. So here's the Lilliput that's the Lilliput translation. Maybe my one isn't good enough. So I thought we'd look at that to figure out what Bach is saying. So, since this manner is used in most cases to make the notes shine, those who need to be entertained and simply performed because of the affect are generally used, and those who do not understand the true performance and pressure are the ones who lose the time if it is generally too long. It will be spoilt. So, that's the translation of what Bach said. And this probably shows my ignorance. There's probably Lilliput professors nodding now. And, we're meant to feel like idiots, inferior, when we hear this because we don't understand it. But they'll be nodding and they'll go, ah, yes, Ah, yeah, very good. Yeah, no, Bach is wonderful. So I'll try to figure it out what he's saying. So they say, since this manner is used in most cases to make the notes shine. Well, Bach calls it the manier, and that's the ornament, and manner is a translation for manier, but it's not used in English to refer to ornaments, but that's what is meant. So instead of since this ornament, which is the word that's used in English, they says a manner, but we can figure out that ornament is meant. So since this manner is used in most cases to make the notes shine, yeah, that's okay. Another translation of glänzend will be shine. Those who need to be entertained and simply performed because of the affect are generally used. So those who need to be entertained. So what would that be? Would that be like maybe the audience members, listening to the concert, they need to be entertained, which would make sense. Like, I mean, that's part of that's what they're there for, to be entertained. So those who need to be entertained and simply performed because of the affect are generally used. So those who need to be simply performed because of the effect of what? I think there they might mean effect with an E. But maybe they don't. Maybe they do, want affect. So the audience members who need to be simply performed, maybe they're missing two. Maybe they need to be simply performed too. Because of the affect are generally used. So I don't know. You'll generally use those audience members who need to be entertained and simply performed. And those who do not understand the true performance and pressure are the ones who lose time if it is generally too long. So maybe that means those people in the audience who don't understand the performance, what the performer is doing, and the pressure. So maybe those who don't understand the pressure the performer is under, those are the ones who lose the time. So if it's generally too long, so maybe that means if the concert is too long, those who don't understand the true performance and the pressure the performer is under are the ones who will, nod off and fall asleep and start snoring. Maybe that's what Bach is saying. And then it will be spoilt. So yeah, so maybe the snoring then spoils the concert if the concert is generally too long. So very, very valuable information from Bach there. So I stand corrected. Mediocrity does not attack genius. Mediocrity does not eradicate genius. Because what you can see there is the perfect preservation of what Bach says, or the yeah, so keep the concert short, otherwise you'll put people to sleep, they'll start snoring, your concert will be spoiled because of the snores. And those people need to be entertained. Yeah, I don't know, that's what I can make of it. Since this manner is used in most cases to make the notes shine, those who need to be entertained and simply performed because of the effect are generally used, and those who do not understand the true performance and pressure are the ones who lose the time if it is generally too long. It will be spoilt. So On the other hand, it could be complete gibberish. It could be gobbledygook, because I'm not sure that's even a correct sentence. And even though the Lilliput professors will nod knowingly, and even though you'll feel like bad, even though I'm like, this is an absurd example for that, it's too absurd. You know, this is Lilliput. This is their own. And I don't know, for anybody who'd like to hear my translation, I'll read it again now and put my one up on the screen. Da diese Manier in den meisten Fällen gebraucht wird, die Noten glänzend zu machen, so werden gemeiniglich die, so wegen des Effekts, unterhalten und simpel vorgetragen werden müssen, und wobei denen, so den wahren Vortrag und Druck nicht verstehen, die Zeit insgemein zu lang wird, dadurch verdorben. Außerdem pflegt sich bei diesem Doppelschlag der Fehler einzuschleichen, welcher bei dem Gebrauch aller Manieren zu vermeiden ist, nämlich der Überfluss. So what is Bach saying there? He's saying, since this ornament in the majority of cases is used to make the notes lustrous, thus are generally those notes which, because of the effect, have to be performed sustained and simply, and whereby, for them who don't understand true interpretation and weight, the time is by and large too long, thereby spoiled. So what he's saying is those notes are generally spoiled that have to be performed sustained and simply, so they have to be held out for their proper length of time and are performed simply, so without any ornaments, in order for the effect of that passage to work. Those are the notes that are generally spoiled by those people who don't understand true interpretation and weight. And so what happens when they have to hold those notes for their proper length of time, the time it gets too long, they get restless. It feels like, oh, this is taking way too long. So what do they do to shorten those notes? To shorten the time that they're not able to kind of wait out or sit through, they add a brace, they add this ornament to make the notes lustrous. Spoiling, ruining the effect. And so these are generally the notes that are spoiled. This is one of those places where this ornament does not benefit. So that's what Bach is saying there. And would you have figured that out from the other translation? So while Bach in the previous paragraph was referring to Lilliput in general, so the teacher, professor and YouTuber level, in this paragraph he is talking to the top tier of the Roll of Honor. In Sokolov's performance of the second movement of K457, an example of exactly that what Bach is describing can be heard. At the last fermata in bar 52, the time becomes too long for Sokolov, because he doesn't understand true interpretation and weight, which can be heard in in the entire movement. So what does he do? Instead of performing the A and A flat simply and sustained, he introduces a brace in that he adds a bit of sprinkle to a fermata Mozart already decorated, thereby ruining the effect Mozart created. And I'd love to be able to put up. That is exactly the situation Bach is talking about, where the notes have to, the A natural and A flat have to be performed simply and held out for their proper length of time. And that is and that creates an effect, Mozart's effect. That was his decoration of the fermata. And because Sokolov was not able to do it. And I'd love to be able to put a clip of that up here now, but one, I don't know how, and two, I don't know if I can or not, like if that's allowed, and I think it probably isn't allowed. So I can just put up a clip of me playing that to show, the effect and how it's to be performed. So Bach called it. And where does it hit? At the level of Sokolov. With his performance of K457, Sokolov validates both paragraphs 7 and 8, even to the extent that Sokolov introduced a brace, which, as I've said, nowadays is not normally done. Is that not uncanny? To call it one for one from way back in 1753, to have said what is done and why it's been done. So he says what's going to happen with Sokolov is the time will be too long for those notes that are meant to be performed simply and held out, sustained, their full length of time. The time will become too long for Sokolov. And what will he do to shorten the time, to fill it in? He'll add a brace. And why is he doing that? Bach as well calls that out. Why is he doing it? Because he doesn't understand true interpretation. Do we need to start paying attention to what Bach is saying if that is the level to which he speaks? What does that say about the state of classical music today? Sokolov is Lilliput's champion. Do we need to wake up to the existence of Lilliput? Bach is referring here to, without naming it, to the time-bending quality of music as it exists in the world of music, and as it is absent in Lilliput, in its role of honour, in the cage of mediocrity, where all genius has been eradicated. He is talking as those who talk, who move in the world of music. We get to hear Sokolov through Bach's ears and realise that Bach is aware of things all of Lilliput have shown themselves to be oblivious to. Paragraph 8 is what Bach would say to Sokolov in Sokolov's lesson with him. Imagine the blow to Sokolov's ego. And then his realization of how much it is he does not know. Because he will know when Bach says you don't understand true interpretation and weight, Sokolov will know he doesn't, because he won't know what it is. He won't be able to answer, no, that's not true, Bach. True interpretation and weight is, and he'll go on to say what it is. He won't be able to say what it is. He'll know he doesn't know. And he'll know that's exactly what he did there. And why did he do it? He wouldn't have done it had he known. So Sokolov would know who the master is and who the pupil is. And I'll just say now, I don't need anybody to believe me. It's there for everybody to draw their own conclusions. You can look and you can listen and you can wonder and think, and you can compare it to my interpretation, and you can hear the difference and ask yourself, does Sokolov know true interpretation? And see all the people who don't see that. You only need not make, it's all about note mistakes. If you don't make note mistakes, then you're great. As far as Lilliput goes, you're great. But Lilliput do not hear all the mistakes the likes of Sokolov and Kissin are making. Their performances are full of mistakes. And nobody notices them. Nobody knows they exist because they're not note mistakes. But they are bigger mistakes than fluffing in the odd note here and there. They are mistakes of much greater gravity. And they are mistakes that kill classical music. For anybody with a true musical soul, that is the worst thing, because it'll turn them off it completely, because those people respond to actual music and not a string of notes presented by functioning illiterates. And I don't want to pick on them. I just use them as examples as the top of the roll of honor, because when I say them, you can automatically put everybody else on the roll of honor, just like, like in a line of dominoes. And so I'm pushing the top dominoes over, and all the rest will fall after them. And if you think of Mozart's perspective of that, if you think in terms of art, like painting, and imagine a master from the past like Rembrandt or Caravaggio or Leonardo da Vinci or something was time traveled forward and representing the people back then, and they present their masterpiece, and then we elect our champion to represent us, and then along comes some artist, and Leonardo da Vinci or any of them, Rembrandt, presents his masterpiece, and our expert, our genius or champion says, you know what this needs? It needs a bit of glitter, a few sprinkles. And that's their contribution. It's embarrassing. We will go, oh, please, sit down. And so Mozart's point of view, that's a complete, he decorated the fermata. And he could say to Sokolov, what's wrong with my decoration of the fermata? If you don't like it, why don't you play your own? Leave my decoration of the fermata out and add your own. But what's this? Just adding a little bit of sprinkle onto the top. What's that about? Is my decoration not good enough for you? So Mozart could be upset with Sokolov, and Sokolov will have to say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know any better. And Mozart will say, you know, a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing. Drink deep or not at all. Or pity the fool. That's Alan Partridge. Yeah, and like in Greece, you know, Sokolov is Lilliput's champion. And in you know, if you think ancient Greece, or I don't know if it's actually true, but the idea of two armies opposing each other, and instead of the armies fighting, they each have their champion, and the champions fight each other. And then so whoever champion loses, then that army loses, and the victorious champion, their army wins. And when when one army presents Mozart and his masterpiece, and the other one comes up with some guy saying, "Oh, adds a bit of sprinkle." I mean, that's an embarrassing defeat. That is, and it could be that you'll be ridiculed for that defeat, that loss. And that all the supporters of Sokolov could be called the Sprinkle Brigade, because they applaud, they endorse Sokolov adding a few sprinkles to Mozart's composition. That's embarrassing. And why do I say that? Because, you know, you get with the hubris of Lilliput, they'll be talking about how if only those composers could hear how well their music is being performed, what like levels we've achieved in our modern age with all our technology. And a lot of the nonsense that you'll find on YouTube, like the metronome theory stuff, it's all based on the premise that Bach, Mozart, and Beethoven were all crap at the piano, and what for them was amazing achievement. For us, it's the performance of those pieces as you play them, as you practice them in the cage with the metronome, just slow and dead and dull and flat and badly connecting one note to the other, and they're going on about how, you know, how superior we all are. And if it was an actual showdown, that's how it would look. Lilliput's champions would come out looking pathetic, puny, weak. And that's because all genius has been eradicated by Lilliput. There's none left. I am resurrecting that genius that has been lost. And it's there. You don't have to believe me. You can look and decide for yourself. And I'll just keep producing the stuff that I'm going to pound Lilliput. And the longer I'm ignored, the worse it's going to be, because the worse they are going to be, because eventually it's going to have to come out, doesn't it? I mean, if anything at all is true about life, you'd think the truth eventually has to come out, has to be recognized. It eventually comes out. And when it does, they won't be able to recover. Because I haven't even begun in reality. Yeah, so. And as well, like the people in university, students in university will hear that basically they'll be told to approach this, what Bach says, in that he's talking to people who basically aren't able to tie their own shoelaces. But he's not. Bach is speaking directly to Sokolov. I could teach the things to Sokolov that Bach would teach him. You know, and I, I'm learning from Bach. That's how low down Sokolov is, and he's the top of Lilliput. That's how tiny Lilliput is. That's who he's talking, and I can see from the Lilliput translation that there's not a hope in hell that Lilliput will ever know what Bach is talking about, let alone will be able to know that Bach is actually referring to the likes of Sokolov. And I use him as a symbol, not him personally. And, you know, there's, like he was trying. He didn't understand about decorated formatus. He didn't understand where and when. He didn't recognize that that was already decorated. And he thought since there's that formatus sign, one automatically adds whatever to it. A little tiny bit of sprinkle. And he makes it better. And and had he not added that, he still wouldn't have been able to perform those notes properly to create the proper effect. He still wouldn't have done it because it anyway wouldn't have worked, because his entire interpretation of the whole movement is, you know, he doesn't know what true interpretation is, nor does anybody in Lilliput. I mean, and if you're listening to this, if you're following this, you are not in Lilliput. Your focus is being directed on the world of music, on the world outside Lilliput, and you will start to recognize interpretation. That's something that doesn't exist. Interpretation now is all about volume control. Is about listening to 10 recordings, picking what you like out of all of them, and making your new version based on those 10 recordings. But none of those 10 recordings, none of the people on those recordings know what true interpretation is. So, and besides those notes that should be performed sustained and, their proper length of time and simply, aside from those notes being ruined, the other mistake that creeps in, and this is like Bach already said that in paragraph 7, that can creep in, is that of excessiveness, using it too often. And I think Mozart, when you consider a piece like the Fantasy in C minor, that Mozart is quite fond of the brace and he uses it often. But and so you can see, like, what I'd say to that is, in reaction to that, a Lilliput person in the cage, those who, they could set up, it's like they chase their figments of imagination, and just like they try to eliminate as many notes of the prowl trill to actually make it take up no time. They might say one shouldn't put more than 3 braces in a piece, and they'd be just as wrong as the person who litters the piece, and because they don't know why, they're just making up some random rule that can't be supported in any way. And with Mozart's use of the brace, first of all, that can be another element to the food for thought. If he liked the brace so much, why did he not use that in his earlier sonatas? And could it be that there are no braces in those earlier sonatas? And the other thing is, you can see how the excessive use of the brace is not necessarily in how often you play the brace, but the excessive use of it essentially is using it in the wrong place, using it in those places where it doesn't benefit. And even in that second movement, Mozart uses the brace often, but the only excessiveness that was, the mistake of excessiveness that was done there was by Sokolov and not by Mozart. So you can see that the excessiveness does not necessarily refer to how often you use it, but is using it where it doesn't benefit the situation. And of course, excessiveness too. If you overdo it, you'll lose its effect. So you don't want to spoil those places that benefit most from the brace by kind of tiring the listener with an overuse of it beforehand. But I mean, this is all stuff you'll know yourself. I don't need to be saying that. I feel silly saying it, to be honest. That assumption that Bach is talking to people who aren't in a position where they can even tie their own shoelaces, that is a surefire way to miss the importance of what Bach is saying. And it's hilarious because those people that the professors are putting down, they are them. Those professors just have no idea of it. Those professors it will be forgotten by Lilliput in the future that those professors now ever existed, just like these professors now forget that the version of them existed in the time of Bach, and they won't realize that Bach is above them, and that he is above Sokolov, and that these are all, they're all Lilliput. But you don't have to be in Lilliput. Bach here is reaching out his hand and saying in paragraph 7, I can help you, but these people won't see that because they're too convinced of themselves. Their ego is in play. They're already exploiting. They have it good in the cage. I mean, not really. But as far as their intelligence will tell them, they'll convince themselves that they have it good. But they'll always be dissatisfied. They'll never be happy with their piano playing. It'll always only be relevant in how they can take advantage of others, how they can use the piano and their position to feel important. So as long as there's a student or a group of students there looking up to them and making them feel important, piano's great. But as soon as they're at home, the piano will be a horrible thing for them. They won't want to touch it because they won't be able to stand the sound of themselves playing because it sounds so terrible. And all that advice that they're giving the students, feeling so important at the time doing it, none of that advice will help them themselves in their private moments. Whereas if you follow what I'm saying and what Bach is saying, you will never get tired of playing. And on your worst days, when nothing works, you go to the piano and the piano will work. Because it is actually, what Bach is talking about actually is, and what I am sharing. I am adding things to what Bach says, like the solution to fingering. That is combined, actually is the true way to play the piano. And it is a way forward out of the mess that Lilliput have created, in where they've killed classical music. Bach talks about Lilliput. You know, this is like I said, I try not to, but it wants to come out, all this. Lilliput is wasting your time. Your time is limited and they are wasting it. That is a huge injustice, and it's an injustice. It is, you know, one of the things is honor thy father and mother. If you think of Bach, Mozart and Beethoven as your musical fathers, Lilliput is not honoring them when they manipulate their words, when they malign their pieces. They are not honoring them. And when the vandalism is promoted and taught as the correct thing, that is not honoring them, their contribution to humankind. So I think personally, if I was to, you know, if somebody would say to me, what are you giving out so much for? I'd think, well, that the injustice is that great. And I don't think, these people have nothing to be proud of. And it's only when their true size is shown to them will they feel the shame if they aren't, if they don't have integrity, if they don't say, yes, there is something we can learn, there is something valuable. If they can't say that, if they want to pretend that they are doing the right thing, well then, that's when, the shame the ground can open up and swallow them. Despite that, there's a lot of useful information there. and there'll be more to come. Thanks. Bye.